through, like Wes is saying. But I think one thing to know is that these guys, that a lot of the ones that we're working with, we're having meetings with them. So in our internally in our meetings, it's just about when can we go public and how do we go public, right? So I think for you guys, you don't have like you're from the outside, you don't have like a transparent window looking in, but we're doing our best also to get that news out to you and share it with our community as well. Yeah, very very excited. These guys, they're big into blockchain, and that's all I'll say right now.
Yeah. We wish we would all move at startup pace like we try to. Fortunately, that's just not the case. But the validator nodes or really anything else we do with kind of more traditional companies, but it's all worth it. In the end, we think, and like Tim said, they are two companies that are making deep inroads into blockchain. So we think their commitment is serious. It takes some time to get there, but we think just the fact they want to be a validator node on a public blockchain is a big step and shows that they're really in this for the long haul.
For sure.
Okay, I'm gonna hop into another question here. So there's a question is, what is the latest news on video on demand? Because that's a pretty important part of our roadmap here and what we can do with our partners. Obviously, we started with live streaming. You guys are all very familiar with Sliver live streaming now, but that's our case for Sliver and more esports focused. But for a lot of video platforms familiar with it, it's not live streaming as much as video on demand of like premium content or other things where it's pre-recorded and such. So biggest news on that is that we're very close to on Sliver TV launching the first instance of what we're calling concurrent VOD. And so the distinction we're making between there is, so you think of like say a YouTube video that has to be cached or stored somewhere, and if you want to watch it, it needs to be accessed from wherever that point is stored on. That's more complex because then you have to introduce the storage element into play and how that's done in a decentralized way. But for a VOD that's really popular, it almost functions just like a live stream. Because if you think about it, like Tim and I are both watching the same VOD content, even if it's pre-recorded, like say it's a TV show they just launched, if we both started at the same time because it's a hot premiere, we can basically treat it like a live stream and share with each other because we're watching it just about the same part in the video. So it's kind of like a half step toward full VOD support. And we're very close to the first couple videos that are going to be using that implementation on Theta on Sliver. And so that's something that's really interesting and is going to open up some doors with us with partners because it tends to be that the most popular content that works with concurrent VOD, that's exactly what they want streamed anyway. Right. They're not as concerned with the long tail of unpopular videos. So short answer is we're hoping next couple weeks is when that will go live, but very shortly, and that'll be the first step to rolling out, being able to do that with our third-party partners as well.
And we've tested concurrent VOD out internally also. So with like long videos, think movies and stuff like that, 45 minutes to an hour or 2 hours or something like that. And we've had different people just in the office test out this video at different points, watching it at different points, and we've been able to serve video to each other. If I'm watching at minute 3 and Wes is watching at minute 25 or something like that, then Wes is able to basically serve me that video stream that he's already watching. So that's what we mean by concurrent VOD. It's just different from live because live is like real-time dynamic content generated on the fly. Concurrent VOD is just a VOD file, and then if we have enough people watching it at the same time, then the mesh network and mesh streaming works all the same.
Yeah. I saw a question in chat about meeting the requirement for how much upload bandwidth you're contributing for it. Wasn't quite sure from the context from Fox 1K, but if you mean on the edge cacher software, so up until recently we had a lot of users that weren't meeting the threshold of how much they're contributing. So what that means is basically we look at all the edge cacher, people that are running edge cacher software, and you have to be at least sharing more outbound than you are pulling from CDN, so that you're a net contributor to the network. And we were disabling edge cachers that didn't quite meet that. So a couple of changes we actually made just last night, I think, but are making a big difference. One is that we lowered the threshold a little bit to encourage more users to be able to share. And we also changed the disabling function that if you're not performing efficiently as an edgecaster, it was previously stopping you for 24 hours, which was just too punitive and was stopping users from being able to use, like you might get disabled at a time just because you happen to not have peers nearby. It's unfair to have you not be able to share for 24 hours. So we lowered that to 1 hour, and you'll automatically, your edgecaster will automatically recheck and see if you're have some peers nearby you can share to. So net effect is a lot more people should be sharing, and if you're having problems with that before, go and fire up the edgecaster. It should be working better now. To Rio, you want to be a T-Fuel streamer so badly, there's an application process. Go ahead, we'll support you on that. In fact, you know, we're going to start giving out T-Fuel in this chat to the people who submit the question you like. So, Ten Rio, why don't we give 500 T-Fuel to him right now? Get him started on that.
Ask some good questions, you guys, and we'll grant more.
Yeah. Let's drop 500 T-Fuel as inventory. We'll give you a head start toward being a T-Fuel streamer. So Bones Dog asked, do you think the Theta Network to handle game data will be feasible? So there's a couple different ways you can think about that.
Right, game data, not quite sure what you're defining as game data, but definitely in our long-term vision, we are thinking about handling game patches. So when you think about it, you know, you're playing this game and, you know, a game patch can be like a gig or even more than that sometimes, right? So if you download this game patch and everyone else has to download it at the same time, right? Then there's no reason why everyone should be hitting that central server. If I get it, basically it's a static file that's sitting in my local storage somewhere. I can basically put that onto Theta, partition my hard drive in some way, and then be able to serve that that data, a gig file or more, over to Wes, who needs that same game patch. Let me know if that's what you're talking about for game data, or if there's some other content that you're talking about for that one.
In the Medium update, we mentioned a world tour. Well, we have some plans on. I want to crank the sound up a little bit too, or maybe we just need to get a little closer to the mic for you here. So world tour might be a little bit an exaggeration. I don't know if it's going to be like Metallica in '91 covering every country, but we're definitely going to be making the rounds at several conferences here in the Bay Area with us. Hopefully some others in the U.S. Definitely have some plans for Korea and elsewhere in Asia. So yeah, it'll be international. World tour might be a bit much, but there's a lot we have planned for the fall and leading up to Guardian Nodes launching that we think be worthwhile to get out onto the crypto circuit and the media conference circuit.
Yeah.
Gregson asked, what are the video card requirements for PG&E or Edgecasters? So currently none at this point. You know, neither is really so processing intensive that it needs a video card. It's not proof of work mining. That said, you know, we mentioned recently in our new roadmap that in 2020 we have our eyes on video encoding, just as a way to, you know, once we've established a network of edgecasters and users that are willing to contribute bandwidth, you know, it makes sense for other idle system resources to be able to use those as well. So, for example, video encoding for raw live streams, that kind of thing, that actually does use a lot of processing power. And if you have a video card lying around that that has that capability, why not contribute that as well? So, short answer is no need to worry about a video card for running a Guardian node or the Edgecaster now, but keep that in mind in the future as we expand into video encoding. We could put that to use as well.
I think the three big things in my mind are RAM, your internet speed, right, uplink and downlink link speed, and then maybe CPU compute power. So those are the three things that for the PGNs and the Edgecasters, yeah, to maybe focus on.
Shake 3K1 asks, when will viewers be able to withdraw T-fuel from Sliver? Yeah, I know. That's something we've been asked out for a while. We probably sound like a broken record over here, but what it comes down to is just doing it in a way where we don't have to put in really punitive KYC to make sure that it's not simply firing up 200 users to operate effectively dummy users that get bandwidth shared between each other and then just get T-fuel for it. And so there's kind of two extremes. We either do no KYC of any type and allow withdrawals, and we have the same bot issues that we have had in Sliver, even predating the Theta project. They've always been a problem. Or we require full KYC for withdrawals, which feels like a pretty crappy solution and also kind of antithetical to what we're trying to create in a trustless system here. So, the work is ongoing, but yeah, it's a lot bigger task than it sounds like. It's not simply flipping a switch. And so with everything else going on, trying to push our partners to getting on mainnet, trying to get Guardian nodes out, improving the edge cacher, it just hasn't been a top priority to put development resources on. But, we know it's something that is critical to put in, if nothing else, because it is so complicated. This is something we feel like we need to figure out so that we can export a good solution to our partners. Yeah, it's not something easy to figure out. So, if it's difficult for us and we understand the system very from ground up, it's going to be even harder for a partner.
Yeah, on that topic, I think David Theta, you may have hit it. I think that's what you're talking about. So there's two things, right? What Wes touched on is basically we have to deal with all the fraud issues and all the edge cases that could come up for possibly malicious users to try to game the system. So we have a lot of these things in mind, and we're talking about them in our product meetings as well. I think Wes touched on that pretty well. The second thing is regulatory compliance, right? So we have to think through all the scenarios for staying within basically compliance for when we touch on an issue like allowing withdrawal of T-fuel on our platform. So those are two really big things. But then also one thing more on the platform and product side is that we think it's a pretty good experience right now being able to earn T-fuel and then donate it back to the streamers. And this aspect of being able to support your content creators is really a compelling feature that we think we have on our site that engages the users and also engages the streamers really well. And it's a really strong feedback loop in between the users and the streamers. So we're pretty happy with the way things are going right now. We hear some of you guys on your preference for being able to withdraw. So we definitely have that in mind as well.
Unique but not asked, so quick question on the edge cacher. After our recent changes, how long you have to, it'll go before you're disabled if you're not hitting a 1:0 ratio. So I believe it's a 5-minute period that essentially evaluates where your ratio is, how much you're sharing versus how much you're pulling from CDN. And then after that 5-minute ratio, if you're below 0.9, then you're considered inefficient and will be disabled. Then 1 hour from then, essentially, you can have another trial period. All right. Mr. Cold Hollow, yes. Good, you did see the mug. I've been using this as my daily one around the office.
Oh, that's cool. His wife designed it.
That's
awesome.
Emily, I believe is her name. So thank you to Emily for that one. It's great. Will it be near future be possible to clip from streams on Sliver? That one I actually don't know. That's one on the Sliver side of things, which we're not typically covering up, but like I said, it has been on our roadmap, and I know that on the public one that our development team has put out, so we can follow up on that and see when that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to one of the so what it says is, will all the channels on Sliver TV run on the Theta Network? And if so, what is the timeline for this to happen?
Yeah, so it's definitely, as you've seen, probably a good half or more of the channels are running on Theta Network now. It's not a capacity issue so much as we don't want to just we have a waiting list of hundreds of streamers that want to be on a Theta channel and earn T-Fuel. The issue is that we don't want to open up the floodgates and have 300 of them, because then the viewers are spread among so many that each individual streamer is not actually earning that much, and then they're going to say, well, I don't see the value in this. I was earning more even without it. And it's not because of necessarily that the Theta economic system doesn't work. It's just you have too much supply and not enough demand for a given number of users. So we're purposely restricting that, and we'll continue to scale that up, as whether it's with other partners or with Sliver. And a small number of them actually will probably always have as Twitch embeds or non-Theta streams, because we've actually been able to use this as a great way of converting streamers over to Sliver, saying basically, like, don't disrupt what you're doing now. You can continue to stream to Twitch, but just let us embed you on Sliver. You can get to know the Sliver users, see the other engagement things, and then once they are regularly streaming to Sliver and it's piqued their curiosity about how they can earn more by switching over to a Theta channel, and it's kind of creating like a pipeline of new streamers to get to become part of Sliver as well. So that's been useful.
Yeah, and on Sliver right now, aside from I think all of the more popular channels are on Theta right now, and I think it's mostly the Twitch embeds that are not on Theta, and that's because they're Twitch embeds. But all of our content creators and most of our users, I think, are on Theta powered channels. So we're looking forward to growing that even more. Like Wes mentioned, we have a big queue. Kyle's working hard managing that queue of content creators, and we're excited to onboard more, over time, gradually.
Yeah. Neil Bugs, hey. So you asked if Sliver customers can't withdraw T-Fuel, would that be the same for the enterprise validators earning T-Fuel? No, that's not going to be the case, simply just because there's no fraud issue at play there. We definitely know who it is. We can go knock on their doors if we have to. So yeah, it's not a concern of somehow gaming the system or fraudulently spinning up lots of nodes. They're running exactly one node, and we know exactly where it is, and yeah, we have enough legal documents in place, and it's not really a concern of a KYC thing. So it's just a different.
I think one thing to mention with Sliver is that with Sliver, it's very much the first D app that's built on top of the Theta infrastructure, right? The Theta blockchain. And so with Sliver, we're trying our best to emulate how the model in which how we would onboard other partner platforms as well and other D apps. So we can't necessarily force other platforms and other D apps to allow withdrawals of T-Fuel or of their own tokens if they choose not to, right? So that's basically the kind of format that we're starting with, and Sliver is very much just the first D app. So that's another type of reasoning. But everything related to the protocol level of Theta, those things you definitely will be able to earn your T-Fuel and then withdraw your T-Fuel as well.
Yeah, and I see, Neil, I misunderstood the question there. You're not talking about the enterprise validator nodes for the T-Fuel that are earned by staking running their nodes as well. You mean for, video platforms running it for their users that are earning T-Fuel, like say for relaying video streams. Yeah, so that's, I don't know if you caught the tail end of the last, when I was talking about this earlier, but that's kind of the crux of why we have to solve this for ourselves, because it is a complicated problem, and we think this is something that will greatly smooth the adoption with our partners if we can provide them a sort of battle-tested solution that's worked on Sliver, rather than asking all of them to come up with that solution for themselves, just because it's been a tricky one for us in ourselves. So we know it's not an easy problem. And as to whether they allow it or not, that's frankly up to them. But we think that it'll happen much sooner if we can come to them and say, we already tried this, we know what works and what doesn't, and here's what works on Sliver TV, and this is our recommendation for how you implement it on your platform. So just think of it as kind of like besides just giving them a protocol and saying, do what you want with it, providing that value add as Theta Labs, so we can say, this is how it's going to work well for you. To extend on that, David did ask how exactly we're going to do that. And while nothing's final, we're working through a couple ideas like setting thresholds where below a certain amount that withdrawal is possible without any type of restrictions. If there's certain things that flag looks like an unusual amount you should be earning, or geographically it's just an unusual pattern. If all of a sudden in a country that's not very popular for Sliver TV, for example, we have a huge number of new viewers pop up and edge cachers in that same area, that's an obvious case where our interest would be whether that's fraud or not. And so, that's kind of one-off ways that we prevent it. And so what our team is trying to do is how do we convert those kind of obvious scenarios into an algorithm that can look for that. So instead of us having to manually go through and see what looks off, that can be done automatically, and so it's not as much of a concern. If you've run our edge cacher, you can think of it a little bit like, technically you see in one of the hover boxes that we may require KYC for the payouts for edge cachers. Now, we just paid out the first month of edge cacher payments, and we did KYC on 0 users because we essentially evaluated what was kind of the patterns of how they were sharing and how users were earning, and nothing seemed to miss, so we didn't feel it was necessary. I imagine something along those lines will how it will turn out to Sliver, but given it's a larger platform, whether that's something that we can just do manually like that, I don't know, and that's not scalable either. But I'd imagine something along those lines where we'll kind of have different lines of defense where everything looks normal, it's a small amount, we simply don't worry about any withdrawal. As you get to higher amounts and more suspicious behavior, there's more scrutiny on it.
Yeah, so like Wes mentioned, right, we're looking at suspicious user behavior patterns, and we're also looking at suspicious peering patterns, right? So on the tracker servers, which are the servers that basically match the different peers together, we're able to kind of track this activity. And see if and we have some alerts put in place, right, to see if there's any really unusual behavior happening. And then another thing also is we set the trackers so that it can be like there can be a randomization of the type of nodes that you get peered with, so that you will never be peered with 10 of the same nodes like for a really prolonged period of time. So it really just makes it a lot harder for fraudsters and botnets and all these other types of malicious types of activities for them to game the system. And I think the goal is just to stay one step ahead of whoever will try to game us. And so we think through a lot of these scenarios. And then a lot of other mechanisms after we detect that kind of behavior is outright banning or putting in GeoIP detectors, and then trying to see if if there's a lot of activity coming from one IP address or one geolocation that usually doesn't get that kind of activity, right? Yeah. Just a few ways that we're talking and thinking through it. I'm sure our thinking will evolve as well, but so far it's looking okay. But we're always trying to iterate on it as well. Yeah. Let's give David Theta some.
Yeah, give some more. Give David 500 T-Fuel. Actually, in fact, David just this week started doing his first streams on Sliver TV. I haven't been able to catch one yet, but I've heard they've gone great, and I think he's got another one coming up. I want to say Thursday this week. So keep an eye out for David. Watch his stream.
Now everyone wants some.
Yeah, I see we're giving out. All right, Gregson spread some T-Fill. Fine. All right, 100 to Gregson. Since he asked politely. Thursday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, presumably for David's stream. Yeah, so check it out.
Okay, so what is your strategy in gaining the attention and adoption from China, Africa, and South America? So whoever asked this is a really good question because China, Africa, South America, at least Africa and South America, tend to be developing countries more or less, developing regions of the world where the content delivery infrastructure may not be as good. So that's the perfect use case and the perfect type of demographic where Theta can be used the most and it can be the most valuable. And actually, if you guys look at a CDN pricing chart, the price per gig or price per unit of data in Africa and South America is also the highest there as well. So that's kind of like a real life indicator for where Theta can be used and benefit the users mostly. So the answer to that is our strategy for every other enterprise partner, which is to onboard these video platforms or these data intensive use cases. It doesn't have to be video, right? As we're looking forward towards fully decentralized data delivery, it can be more generalized data types, data content. But it's to onboard these use cases and these platforms and these enterprises that need content and data delivery. So the reason we're doing this is because when you think about adoption for a blockchain, right? There's really two ways to do it. You can think of it from going from the grassroots approach and going ground up, or the way that we're taking is the first way we're taking is going top down, right? So top down is onboarding a lot of these enterprise partners so that they also take their use case and take their user base over and they port it onto Theta, right? So it's a B2B to C type of approach, but that's the most streamlined way, I guess you can put it, to gaining adoption of the Theta protocol. Of course, we're not totally ignoring the grounds up approach. We totally understand that there has to be a grassroots type of movement to really adopt us, and so that's why we're opening up our protocol to other third-party developers as well. But really, to get adoption in Africa and South America, there are a lot of video platforms out there that could benefit, and so the key is for us to really find these enterprises, knock on their doors, and then articulate our value proposition very clearly to them. And then just get them to test us, come on the test net first, and then once they see that there's actually value to be gained with bandwidth offload, data sharing offload, and then their users are able to benefit from this by earning these token rewards. That's how the virtuous cycle tends to repeat itself.
Yeah. And one other minor point to add to that is that like everywhere in the world, there is always some regulatory uncertainty at this point with blockchain, but particularly in China, and it wasn't asked in this question, but we get asked about India a lot, and we would love to make inroads in the India market as well, but that's another place where, like China, it's just an extremely difficult region to navigate as far as blockchain regulation goes, at least right now. So that kind of puts a damper on things, or at least makes it, all else being equal, less likely for us to pursue, just because, in the same way that we always have to be sure we're on the right side of regulations, that applies to any video platform or other enterprise we want to work with as well. They're cognizant of that. So, yeah, we just have to work where it's more favorable while it is, like, for example, Korea, where everyone knows we've had a lot of success relatively. That's because the environment's pretty receptive in Korea, and as that kind of proliferates throughout the world, hopefully we can expand our reach as well.
Yeah.
A couple quick things Sashin. Grand Illusion asked if we ask bad questions, will we have our T-Fuel taken away? And I did propose that before we went live, but I was voted down. So no, you will keep your T-Fuel even if we like it. You don't need to put up with it. Another good one from Crypto Steve was how we will combat YouTube-style censorship on the platform. So that's because we're delivery infrastructure, and I assume you're talking about Theta and not Sliver. Because it's an infrastructure that we're creating, we are basically content agnostic within reason. Obviously, we can't break the law, but yeah, it's not us that's making content decisions. If we put into a given video platform, we're just the pipes. That's simplifying things a little bit, but that's a good way to think of it, is we're not the ones actually telling them what to broadcast over their platform. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of censorship online, even though usually, or at least some of the times, it's kind of the more unsavory characters that are getting censored, but that's free speech. I don't like the idea of seeing a lot of people get censored, but it's just not really our call to make. In the same way that Amazon or Akamai aren't really making that call. Now, we won't be taking any steps to restrict beyond what a platform would do. But again, we're kind of just a agnostic pipeline for content.
Yeah, for sure. We're just the infrastructure. I think in really, really, really extreme cases, you saw how Cloudflare, for example, they addressed that 8chan issue, right?
Yeah.
So they were actually able to take 8chan offline and just say, we don't support 8chan. In those types of, really edge cases, outlier scenarios, there may be something to be done about that. But for the most part, like Wes said, we are just, the delivery infrastructure. Whichever DApps build on top of us, build on top of us.
Yeah. And frankly, at some point, it's not going to be, unlike Cloudflare, we're not going to have a button to hit to turn off the network or control it anyway.
Right.
It's really just up to platforms that use it, how they want to. Okay, well, why don't we take another one of the pre-submitted questions here. What do we have next? Will the pre-Guardian Node client still run after Guardian's Node launch? Is that the next one here? Yeah, so the question is whether the pre-Guardian Node that everyone's using today, so coming up soon Q4 when Guardian Nodes are launching on testnet and the actual Guardian Node software has been released, which is a totally separate program from the PGN. Once that's out, and especially once the full production Guardian Nodes are out, will the PGN keep running? The answer is, in the long run, most likely not. Mm-hmm. But we will. Our current kind of thinking is that as we're doing testing and it's limited how many people can run a Guardian Node, and it's still kind of being phased in, it'll still run until it gets to the point where, capacity-wise, and after testing, anyone who meets the requirements can run a Guardian Node. At that point, we'll probably sunset out the PGN.
Yeah, the PGN, really the purpose is to serve thus the name pre-Guardian Node is basically it's an indicator for how robust and how apt your hardware and all of your other resources are to eventually run the Guardian Node. So it wouldn't make sense. We could keep it around, but I'm not sure it makes sense to keep the pre-Guardian Node around when we have the Guardian Node. It's just basically, it's a scorecard, right? It even says on the UI, it's a scorecard to show you how ready you are or how ready your hardware is to run the Guardian Node.
Yeah, at that point, if you want to get a scorecard, just fire up the Guardian Node software and see if it runs.
Yep.
If you're contributing by finalizing blocks, it means you're all good. Another one from Crypto Steve asked if he's running this current Edge Cacher client and he's watching this stream, will it look like he's trying to game the system? The answer is no. I believe where we set the thresholds, essentially, like there's some room for what considered reasonable behavior. Mm-hmm. So essentially, like it's obviously if you're running 100 different users at once out of the same IP address, then it'll be very obvious that something funny is going on. If there's two, it's just we're not setting it so sensitive that it's going to be picking up someone doing like that.
And we should also mention, right, with the Edge Cacher, when the productized Edge Cacher also eventually comes out, you will be able to stream multiple streams at one time, right? So if you're watching a maybe an 11th stream or something like that, that won't be counted as gaming the system, because what the Edge Cacher actually is it's like an edge server. It's like a mini server on the very edge of the network, and so we want the Edge Cachers to be able to serve multiple streams at once. So you watching another stream will not negatively affect it at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there other plans in the works for T-Fuel Theta next to the upcoming Shopify project? So, I'm not sure if you mean more generally or as far as T-Fuel being spent, but we're always looking for new ways to create more utility for T-Fuel and ways that it can be used. A lot of that's going to be kind of use case dependent on, like some of the partners coming online is that they're all going to have different use cases. Like some of them might be let's say like advertising VOD content, mm-hmm. where you can use it to turn off ads. Another one is where you're buying episodes of a show So things like that, obviously more focused on the video delivery use case. Not necessarily looking to make T-Fuel just be a generalized payment currency. That said, if it's used a lot throughout different video platforms, maybe it just becomes accepted as something to pay for certain sites anyway. But we're not out there pushing to try to get every merchant to accept T-Fuel. It's just not really aligned with what the goal of the project is. John says, I love the user-created design stuff. Yeah, we thought it was great too. We definitely can do that on a regular basis, have people submit designs, or it doesn't even have to be because we set up a contest or anything. If you guys have some great art and want to make it into some Theta merch, feel free to send it to us on Twitter or drop it in Telegram or something, and we can always take a look at it. Yeah, I thought it was some of the favorite stuff we've done, so yeah, we'd like to get some great artists to make Theta gear. 89 Pinto, please work on getting exchanges to trade Theta for Americans. So this is a lightning rod one, right? We had to address it at some point. As you know, obviously the official line will always be that we cannot discuss anything specific to exchanges. It is important that it is adopted as widely as possible, and that is part of things, but we have to be very sensitive to how we're doing these things, both as a US-based company and also just the way that we're communicating this, because as we talk with exchanges, we're under pretty strict NDAs, and even hinting at something like that is obviously unacceptable and will not end well. So, sorry that it can't give you a better answer there, but if you're familiar with the line taken by most other crypto projects, especially US-based ones, it's just kind of the third rail. We can't touch it. But we are aware. Obviously, we follow what's going on with exchanges, and can leave it at that. That we're aware of the concerns, and we are thinking about it.
I would just say we understand, right? Not talking about exchanges, anything in particular, but I think we understand that user adoption of our token really that's one part of it, right? The exchanges is one part of it. So that's something that it's very high in priority in the things that we discuss internally. So yeah.
We're always talking about it. We do tend to play on the conservative side on things like that, and we don't apologize for that either. We have to take the steps that we think is going to make the Theta Network still around and successful in 3 years from now or 5 years from now. So we can't make rash decisions that end up with consequences of the past. So we're always going to make the most prudent decision. It may not be the fastest or the most pleasing one in the moment, but we do what's best for the long term of the project. Bones Dog asks, what's the highest priority task software-wise for Theta in the works?
Maybe we can combine that question with one that I saw David asked earlier also, which is what are we excited about? Highest priority and what are we excited about the most?
Sure.
I can start. Highest priority task software-wise, and I guess the thing that I'm most excited about is being able to integrate Theta. We're on mobile, we're on PC web. We've shown some videos before, I think they're public, of us integrating on smart TVs. So taking that next step, right, from showing it as a demo and as a proof of concept to scaling it out and really commercializing it and productizing it at scale with one of our partners. And so that's what Theta's all about, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're gonna have to do to gain adoption of our protocol. And a lot of those plans are in motion right now, and I'm excited to see them come to fruition. And I think in the coming months we'll be able to more publicly show what it will be that we're working on. Right now, of course, everything is under NDA, but there's something in the next few months that will be very public that we'll be able to talk about. And that's really exciting, right? And that's related to the whole IoT space, specifically related to TVs. So we're working with, you know, one of the largest TV OEMs out there. And so being able, imagine, right, you know, you buy a TV, and then whether you're watching the TV or whether it's just sitting there, you know, as a, kind of like a latent, you know, resource, you'll be able to contribute on the Theta protocol. That, I think, is really what we want to accomplish at Theta. So yeah, that's something I'm excited about.
Yeah, I would say for me, the thing I'm most excited about, even though we just yesterday released that we're pushing out Guardian nodes on testnet in Q4, and then mainnet the quarter following. So it's a bit longer time frame than we expected, but still we are getting close, and I know that's really exciting. Probably because I spend all day with our community. I know that I'm looking forward to the things that get people more involved and let everyone else start contributing to the Theta Network and being part of it. And more and more we push toward that. It has a whole host of benefits, being that it's not so dependent on Theta Labs and what we do, and it adds more legitimacy to the project to know that, you know, I have a lot of confidence in our team, but I don't want to have to lead with selling this project that you have to trust us that we know what we're doing. I'd be a lot more comfortable once we get to the stage where we can say there's hundreds and thousands of Theta supporters that are running this network, and even if you don't necessarily think XYZ Theta Dev knows what you're doing, it's a whole community coming together and doing it. It's not just dependent on single people. And yeah, we're actually doing the internal testing on testnet. Is coming up pretty soon for Guardian nodes, so it won't be too long till where we start rolling out to the first 100 or so users. They're going to be on testnet, and hopefully increasing that number as fast as possible. And it is happening. It's not quite as fast as we had hoped, but you know, we're getting there, and it'll be really exciting to see that rolled out to the community and get all the people that have been diligently running the PGN for months now to actually get on testnet and participating in consensus. Neil asked how many new people we've added to the team since the last AMA. So that was August. I'm not sure. We have a couple folks on the Sliver team. I think a new GM of the mods, but no one to the core Theta team that's been added. We're just kind of heads down with the current team and delivering on the roadmap. I think for a long time what we discussed would probably be the next inflection point where we're adding significant numbers of staff is once we feel like we have kind of the package production ready model to give to enterprises, like full VOD support, the network is fully functioning with Guardian nodes live and everything, and it's less development and more just we've got a fully baked product and we just need to get out there and number one goal is just give as many platforms as possible to use it, and then it'll be building out a full separate BD team, business development team, instead of just doing it entirely with our current team. When are you planning on opening offices in Singapore, London, and Seoul? So we actually, I don't know if you saw from the pics in Korea, but Tim over at EDC had actually the beginnings of our Sliver Korea team there with some folks there.
Oh yeah.
And I think still out of co-working space now, but beginnings of the Korea office are coming together, and we've got you know, some good folks there that we're building out.
We have Bruce. He's based here, but he might as well be based in Korea, right?
Yeah.
He's there so often.
Right. He's been there for about the last 3 weeks, and,
yeah.
and does all, you know, leads our Korea team, and yeah, and then things aren't quite as far along in Singapore, but we're taking the first legal steps toward building a team there to go along with some initiatives we've got going on in Asia. So not actually to the point where Korea is where we have team built out, but that would be number 2. I would say London would probably be further into 2020, because that's going to be dependent on when we start getting, you know, deep into the lines of some European video platforms and other folks that'll be using this. So that's kind of going to have to be something where we actually make a concerted effort and focus our business development efforts there and get video platforms there, and then London will be where we probably use as our base of operations to start really ramping up BD over there. Have we been in talks with BitTorrent regarding using their technology for game patches and file sharing? No, haven't spoken with BitTorrent. I imagine with everything they're doing with old Justin's son, that might be a bit of a strange conversation at this point. It certainly is there's a lot to be learned from BitTorrent, and I mean, God, I grew up using BitTorrent. Like, we know in certain use cases it works, if nothing else. But I'm not sure it really fits with our vision of what we're trying to do with an edge network of users distributing like game patches at the same time. I think of BitTorrent for more as like the like static content that's not necessarily time sensitive or not necessarily pushed out at the same time. But you have any familiarity with it, Tim?
I think, like Wes mentioned, we're taking a lot of the lessons learned just from BitTorrent in the past. It's been a big part of peer-to-peer, the peer-to-peer ecosystem, and basically building on the companies and the projects that have come before us, and so we've really been able to analyze what made them valuable to some users, what didn't make them valuable, and I think just to rattle off a couple things, right? They kind of got pigeonholed into being peer-to-peer for pirated types of content, right? Mm-hmm. Which is one thing that we're very cognizant about. With our mesh streaming network, with our data delivery network, that's not the direction we're going towards. And also, the incentivization mechanisms that they've used in the past, we think that blockchain, especially with our protocol types of innovations, are much more, I guess, suitable for incentivizing positive types of behavior, right? Contributing your resources, not just for nothing, right? And not just so that you can download another piece of content, but actually so you can earn token rewards, you're more engaged, and you feel valued and you feel part of this community and part of you're contributing on the Theta Network, which you are. So I'd say, being able to look at what they've done in the past and then iterate and continue to improve on that, that's, the extent that we've been, associated with Bitcoin or with BitTorrent. But it's a good thing to have them as, the ones that have come before us, and, we think that we're able to take the next step and continue to improve on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice BitTorrent was, since the acquisition by Charlie, was rolling out something along the lines of a BitTorrent Live for live streaming. But I tried my damnedest to figure out exactly how it was utilizing BitTorrent, or if any live content was actually being delivered on chain, and really couldn't find anything. Maybe it was too early, but it was mostly marketing talk. But I genuinely am trying to figure out what's going on, so if anyone's more familiar with it or has some more info on that, reach out to us or ping me on Telegram. I'd really be interested to see what they're doing. Scroll up, Scott Lennon had a good question just a minute ago about dealing with the hurdles of large corporations. Will we be focusing on smaller platforms for adoption in the future? Yeah. 500 T Field, Scott. That is a very good question. The answer is, I wouldn't say focusing on instead of, because we still see there's a lot of value if we can jump several steps up the food chain and get to one of the largest platforms, and we're not going to stop trying to work with them. If nothing else, just because, like with Samsung, as an example, if there's a group that we get introduced to by Samsung Next and it doesn't work out with them, it's still building relationships within that larger corporation. And there's an example of we're not saying a name, it's probably okay to say, a Samsung partner that we or division that we actually signed an MOU with that did not go public with, and did some POC work behind the scenes. Ended up not working out because that specific use case data just wasn't a good fit for it. So we never announced that we had an MOU with them. But we learned a lot, improved Theta on that, and they introduced us to other Samsung groups that we're now working with,
Yeah.
and so it's a long-term relationship building thing. It's got a long fuse, and it's frustrating putting in work that doesn't pan out, and sometimes we don't even get to mention it publicly because it's all behind the scenes. But it's worth it in the long term. That said, to your point, you got to get some early wins under your belt too, and so we have in the last few months started. And actually in the works with a couple smaller video platforms that can move faster and kind of think more like we do, where as opposed to endless meetings and introductions to different groups and approval levels, it's more like Mitch and the team get on a call or have a meeting with their CEO and they just decide on the spot, this is how it's going to be, and here we are moving toward it, which is refreshing. And hopefully we'll at least, well, it's not necessarily like the home runs of YouTube adopting Theta or something like that. It's good to get a couple wins like that and start to make some progress there. And we think we can effectively kind of like, run both tracks at the same time. We're not giving up on the long sales cycle of these big corporations, but you're totally correct that we have to diversify and think about how to get some of these smaller guys on quicker.
Yeah, it's exactly what Wes mentioned, right? It's the difference between the different cycles, right? With the larger corporations, you have a lot more, levels to escalate through, and you have a lot more, layers to kind of get through, right? But then the end result of that we are expecting will be, well worth the effort of putting in all that R&D work into integrating with them, defining the business case, defining the use case, and then actually coming out with a product that will instantaneously be open to tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the install base of whatever app or platform or OEM that we're working with. On the flip side, with the smaller platforms, with the smaller partners, they're just much more agile. They're like us. You stop on a dime, you switch directions. You integrate, get on a call, and then get on another call with their tech team, and then after another week, we have a proof of concept going. That's just not the way that these larger enterprises work, and it's just two different beasts, right? Both totally worth pursuing, and the smaller ones, like Sliver, like a lot of these other partners that we're working with, we're able to, get our hands dirty, roll up our sleeves, work with them, take a lot of those lessons learned, and then apply them in the future to other partners as well, to these larger enterprise partners. So. Both are very worth pursuing, and that's the path we're taking. We're doing it in parallel. Yeah.
New Earth Crypto. I get a lot of compliments on this shirt. Unfortunately, this was a test run from a vendor we ended up not going with, so this is literally the only one in existence. In fact, I got a lot of shit from at the office for snatching this without any type of open competition for it. So. Yeah, long story short, I'm afraid you're looking at the only copy in existence. Yeah. By the way, whoever said congrats, by the way, on it, thank you. I appreciate that. Picked up some new hardware just a couple weekends ago, so thank you. It was a great time. All right, let's see what else we got here. Why don't we take another one from our pre-submitted questions? We haven't got through nearly as many of them. Already an hour deep here.
Answered quite.
Yeah, we kind of answered the first one there about more T-fuel use cases. Yeah, that's focused.
Here's a quick one, right? Will regular users be able to launch a live stream on Theta Network later on? On Sliver, that's up to Kyle. You should talk to him. I think he's managing the pipeline pretty well. On Theta, that depends on what kind of DApp is built on Theta, right? So in theory, right, that someone could create a live streaming DApp, or we could onboard an existing live streaming platform DApp. In both cases, you'd be able, as a regular user, you'd be able to launch a live stream.
Yeah, I don't think it'll come first party, just because in a perfect world and with unlimited engineers, that'd be fun. But got a lot on our plate already, and but we certainly encourage if there's a kind of general purpose live streaming app out there. We've we talked to some of the larger ones too, but even if it's a small one that wants to is just getting off the ground, and
Yeah.
anyone's open to live stream on it and they want to integrate Theta to their platform, we're all about it. You know, if it's your platform, reach out to us. Yeah. Okay, why don't we go to another question here. How's the Guardian node onboarding program going so far? And will we see the option to run a Guardian node? What's that say? What's the second part? With Mac soon. Oh, yes. So in general, Guardian node onboarding, the PGN program has gone great. I think the total number of registered EAGNs is up to
Just shy of 3,000, right?
yeah, 3,000, something like that. You know, if you go on thetatoken.org and see the new visualization we have up there, you typically see at least 800 that are active at any given time, running that in the Edge Cacher. So it's really great, and if you participate in our Telegram chat, there's there's kind of a community that's formed around getting ready for that. What's the best way to run it? Helping each other out when with new releases and that kind of thing. So we're really happy with that and how the community's come together. With the option of running a Mac, so the full Guardian node software will absolutely run on Mac. Half the office uses it, and the software we're testing that we know for a fact that will run on Mac. If you mean the PGN, at this point we're getting so close to the actual Guardian node software getting out in just a matter of months on testnet that rather than put out Mac on PGN, we may just reserve some slots in that first 100 of users that get to run the Guardian nodes on testnet, and just say a certain amount are allocated to Mac or Linux users or something along those lines, just to make sure it's open to those users who weren't on Windows and couldn't run the PGN. We'll just see. If it makes sense, then we'll see if we want to put out a PGN version quickly that runs on Mac and or Linux. But we might just jump to the Guardian node software itself, which 100% will run on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Okay. Will Theta be willing to structure an esports team for the sake of competition and promotion? I mean, that sounds pretty damn cool. I don't think it's cheap. I see some of these teams being bought up by like a Samsung or an SK Telecom, where they are dropping millions into it at a minimum, probably more than that. So I think it's an expensive business. We could make one. We've got some good gamers on our team. I don't know if it's going to be competitive. I think we're kind of over the hill as far as gamers go, but yeah, we could try it.
Here's an interesting one. What will be the most noticeable changes to the network after the implementation of smart contracts? And I think it's a good exercise to walk through, right? Smart contracts, they're coming out next year, but just imagine on one channel, right? One content creator will be able to perhaps have their own NFTs, have their own types of tokens, right? That they can, give out or something like that. I think that would be pretty interesting in a Sliver type of context. Other things for smart contracts, one smart contract, a feature that we already have is the auto share, streamer auto split, right? So you can designate, I think the percentage is like 25% right now of your token earnings to support your favorite content creator. In the future, you can do any type of variation of that. In the future, if content creators were to want to monetize some of their more premium content, they could use smart contracts to do that, and you could pay not by the full piece of content, but you could also pay by how many minutes or how many seconds you watch. Those are all things that are possible through a contract, right? So it's not pay per view as much as like pay per second or pay per minute. So a lot of really interesting use cases that come about with smart contract implementation.
Yeah, and even though it's a ways off until we'll have a full kind of general purpose smart contracting platform. Already you've seen, like you said, the streamer split that you talked about, kind of these hard-coded use case where we essentially build something akin to a smart contract into the blockchain itself, and and we're talking about different ways that our partners will want different things set up like that. And that's our priority first, just because we're not exactly. It's not the same use case as trying to create an EOS or something where you're building tokens on the platform, or you're trying to create DeFi. Like that's great for Ethereum or EOS or Algorand or something, but we're kind of just laser focused on the ones that are actually going to be used by streaming partners, and then down the line, we'll take on the larger task of the full smart contract implementation, kind of a generalized one. As far as will smart contracts slow down the mesh network, it's not really going to have a direct, like the actual streaming part of it is
two separate layers.
Yeah, that interact with each other, so no, there's no reason it should.
Take one more.
Yeah. Let's see, what did we not answer from our pre-submitted? Covered a lot from questions being set up, but okay, how will Clayton blockchain? Oh, this is a good one. We had some questions come up about so Sliver Korea, the app that we're building with Kakao's Clayton blockchain. That's actually coming up pretty soon. We're going to be releasing the first build of that in, I believe, Google Play Store in Korea. Yeah, Google Play Store.
This week or next week, actually.
Yeah, so that's actually coming up very quickly, and we're actually working on a piece right now. We're going to explain a lot about how Theta plays into that, what we saw in Clayton and how that's working together. As where T-Fuel will be used, yeah, the T-Fuel aspect of it is no different than Sliver now. T-Fuel is the currency that's, or the what's used in payment as a reward for sharing streams on the app. T-Fuel's not replaced in any way. It's just as much a vital part of Sliver Korea, which is obviously, we're not doing anything that doesn't involve T-Fuel that way. It's core to what we do. But more detail on that coming up in the next week or two when we release the app in Korea, and then we'll also put out a blog and some other materials kind of explaining how exactly it works, what our thought process is, and why we think Clayton and Kakao is so important to that market, and what our plans are with them.
Real simply, Clayton is a Kakao subsidiary, and the reason to work with them, one big reason is they're a huge distribution channel, right? They have tens of millions of MAUs, and because Sliver Korea will be using T-Fuel, that's a huge channel for us to push out to tens of millions more users. So that's a really key reason for why we're working with them and why we're excited about the partnership.
Yeah. Someone asked about if you're in, I think it was Farticus asked about if you're in an area that doesn't have as many peers, what can be done if you're in a small community, how can you generate more T-Fuel a bit easier? It's kind of a tough one because really, we want anywhere there's a place where you can effectively deliver video to peers more efficiently than a centralized solution. We want users to be a part of that. That said, if there aren't any other peers nearby, then there's not really anything we can do to change the lack of demand there besides just big picture growing the network and adding more partners.
Yeah.
We don't want to get into gaming the system or kind of basically allowing users to earn when it doesn't make sense for them to. We think the answer is just big picture, that we just need to grow the network so that there's more peers organically out there that are demanding the services of you as an edge cacher. Therefore, you can supply that and earn T-Fuel. But we're not really thinking of any shortcut ways to do that. Marie asked, I always get a certain amount of bytes from peers and from CDN, but how come I'm not getting any to peers? Hard to say just from that, but sometimes what can happen is if you may have different upload and download speeds, so it may be that there's peers nearby that have a strong upload connection and they're able to serve to you, but it's not necessarily just symmetrical. You may be able to download fast enough that you can get data from the Theta Network, but you're not uploading fast enough, or there's a couple different things like that can happen. So
Yeah.
hard to say just in that comment, but it's not necessarily. It may just be that it's not efficient for you to be sharing in that direction.
Depends on your ISP. If your uplink is not as fast as your downlink, then that could be one of the reasons.
Yeah. Okay. There's another pre-submitted question. Will the total T-fuel for Guardian nodes, the monthly reward, always stay the same? So that actually depends on a couple different factors. If you mean the total amount, so it is going to be fixed for a given time because it's based on what the new supply of T-fuel is generated. Like for example, we said that when that goes live, it'll be 5% per year. So break that up per block over the course of the year, and that's how much is generated. That said, just like any piece of software, it can be changed or forked depending on what the protocol consensus decides it will be. That can be adjusted if it makes sense. Today that means Theta Labs. Someday, hopefully soon, it won't be. It'll just be by protocol consensus of the validator nodes and the Guardian nodes. If the entire network as a whole decides to vote that the T-fuel generation should change, then it will. Just like any other blockchain, just comes down to what code is decided. But for a given point, like say in the beginning where it's 5%, it will be the same monthly reward that goes on. Can you scroll up a little on the chat there? I think I saw that. If we're looking for more software developers, what if Theta is open source and what if not? So we aren't hiring more software developers right now, but
if you're good, feel free to apply, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not. I wouldn't say we're officially not. Definitely, if you have an interest in it and think there's ways you can contribute, pretty easy to reach us as a team. Just reach out and start the conversation. Especially if you contribute on other blockchain projects and can jump right in and help, then yeah, it's great. As for what in Theta is open source and what is not, so our kind of guideline has always been anything that's related to the blockchain itself will always be open sourced. Doesn't mean necessarily that it's built in open source repos, that essentially when it's done, it gets pushed open source 100%. And part of that's to encourage it to move in the direction of open source project and get community involved, and part of it's just a transparency thing. There is a lot of value associated with the Theta blockchain, and we can't have there even be the sense that there's some piece of code in the blockchain that we're hiding, a backdoor that Theta Labs has access to or something like that. It's important that 100% of it's open so that there's never any question that you can see anything that's part of the code. Now on the streaming side, there's a lot of things that we built that are proprietary as far as like the peering logic and how it's actually decided, like how is a peer group get set, how is it randomized to put you with different peers over certain periods of time. And that is closed source. Some of it may be open source, others actually we're in the process of patenting as Theta Labs. But nothing related to the Theta blockchain would ever be patented, and in fact that'll all be open sourced. Let me take a couple more of these pre-submitted questions, and then hopefully get one or two more good ones out of the chat to give away a little more T-fuel.
Oh, yeah.
And then, we can wrap up. So, this is kind of interesting one. Is a secure connection through a VPN layer going to negatively affect the amount of shareable bandwidth? So, probably the easiest way to put that is it's not going to change the amount of shareable bandwidth, but if you think of it like Tim and I are situated a certain distance apart and there's a certain number of network hops because we're on different ISPs, all these different things that make it less efficient to peer and share with each other because we're further away, both literally and in a network sense. The VPN is several more layers attached to that, because I'm probably oversimplifying this, but essentially if I want to talk to Tim over a VPN, everything I do on my computer gets sent to the VPN first, and then through the network architecture to get to Tim. And so it's just additional distance to travel and an additional intermediary to go with. Typically, it means you're not going to be efficient enough to peer. I mean, we've used VPNs and you might get some peering efficiency, but it's just an extra drag on whatever you're doing. And especially as an edge cacher, where it's even more important that you are efficiently peering, because there's not a benefit to a video platform anywhere of getting a new user who's watching ads or contributing. It's just got to go down to the numbers. They got to be contributing more to the network than they're taking out of it, meaning they got to be sharing more than they're pulling from a CDN. If you're contributing, let's say 1.5x, and you're a good edge cacher, and then you use a VPN, and now you're operating at half efficiency, you're all of a sudden a net drag on the network. So VPN doesn't block you from sharing, but you're probably not going to be very good. And in the case of an edge cacher, you probably won't be able to work at all.
What's basically going on the network level is that you have these video segments that are being relayed, right, from me to Wes, and Wes to any other user or any other peer. And so say this video segment is like 4 seconds long. Well, that means to get that next video segment, you can only wait at most 4 seconds, right? So what's happening is when you're using a VPN, like Wes mentioned, you're going through significantly more network hops. And so with each network hop, it takes, X number of milliseconds, right? And when you add that all up, it could be that, and you're going through a VPN, it could be that you're sending a video segment over through the VPN to another peer, but then it ends up timing out because it doesn't get to that peer in time, right? Because you've just introduced, a few more layers, right? That the message has to go through. So that's, basically a simple way to kind of describe what's going on when you're using the VPN. Certainly, if you've tried it before and it's working for you, that's good. We don't have any qualms with you using the VPN. Aside from maybe, when we track stats and stuff like that, it may throw off some of our geolocation tracking and stuff like that. But for the most part, if the VPN works for you, go ahead and use it. And if it doesn't work, hopefully the brief explanation kind of explains why. Yeah.
There was a good question I saw just a bit ago, if you can scroll up. Eeks has asked if there's a limit to the number of edge cachers that can be on the network. It doesn't seem like there's a limit within reasonable numbers right now. That was actually the source of an issue right around when we launched the edge cachers, where as soon as we started adding more and more, quickly there's an issue with the edge cacher client crashing. But we pretty quickly figured it out. It wasn't a core issue to edge caching, it was just the way that the edge cachers were pinging our servers to essentially be routed for jobs and such.
Right.
They were, it wasn't intentional or the way by design, but they were starting to ping the server in clusters, and then at one point they were all pinging each other at the exact same time rather than spread out like we would have expected. In any case, it was that was the cause of initial issues that we worked through and kind of redesigned how they speak to the tracker server. And so now it seems to be scaling pretty well. With the 800 running right now, I don't think we've seen any issues as far as scalability whatsoever. So yeah, I mean, we'd like to double or triple that and see if there's any stress test to it. We haven't actually fired them up at scale, like ourselves, and try to run like 5,000 dummy edge cachers. That could be something interesting to try, but no, we don't think this 800 running right now is anywhere close to the limit. We want to get more and more running, and yeah, it'd be a good problem to have. Let's get to 10,000 or 20,000, and if something breaks, we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? To have a dense enough network where in the very, very future, you may not need a centralized content delivery network. That's certainly not our position right now. We're the supplementary layer on top of a CDN. But in the future, if we have enough edge cachers, if we have enough users and nodes in the network participating and relaying data, that's the point we'd like to get to, basically.
Boy asked, would we recommend a set of data center IaaS partners for EC or GNs? We don't have a specific recommendation on that. I don't think the requirements are so onerous that it would make that much of a difference. It's pretty low as far as you're not going to need an industrial strength data center to run a Guardian node. The max number that can run, so from JE and Reval's research, theoretically they think the Gossip protocol tops out around 1,000 Guardian nodes. Is that right? Although in practice, of course,
could go higher.
Could go higher. Okay.
Yeah, in the literature they say 1,000 plus, right? So,
okay.
Yeah.
That said, like most things, we're going to start by rolling out 100 on the testnet, and then if they're quickly coming to consensus within a reasonable amount of time, and there's not a lot of errors, then we want to keep bumping that number up, and that's what the testnet is for. We'll see how far we can push it. Hopefully, get to that 1,000 plus. The broader we can expand the network, the better. Get more community members involved, and make the network harder to attack if it's spread out amongst more users. Different geos. How is Mitch? Is he on holiday? No, he's working. He's just doing his job. I can only get a appearance from Haunted Mitch on the AMA once every other one. He's a hot ticket, so yeah. But next day
we'll have guests come in like myself.
Yeah. Besides, it's a lot. I was joking with Tim before. It's a lot more reasonable when Tim and I have a more nuanced technical discussion, whereas Mitch makes a lot of promises. I get scared whether we're going to deliver or not. But that's why Theta is successful, because Mitch has got the big vision, and he's the one that sees way beyond our current roadmap and where we need to be. But yeah, every time we get done with that, I start thinking, man, we got a lot of work to do. Okay. With the Theta protocol for smart TVs, will you be able to combine watching on the smart TV and computer, or will there only be one of the two who's generating?
You should be able to. So basically, with the smart TV, the vision, right, is to basically allow you to be a viewer watching a video platform, like a user using Sliver right now, or dedicate your smart TV as an edge cacher. So it doesn't work any differently from how it would work on your computer or your mobile device. So the short answer to that question is basically it won't be different. You can watch on your PC, and you can use your TV to watch as well, or you can use your TV as an edge cacher.
Bones Dog says he wants to meet Mitch. You should. Mitch is the man here. We need to get going on some Theta meetups. If you were at our Theta meetup in Korea, you would have got a chance to see Mitch speak and hang out. We were chatting for quite a while afterward, and yeah, we'll be doing more events soon. You meet the whole Theta team. Missed this. We'll be announcing more validators soon. Standard answers, we'd love to do it yesterday. Just gets down to us finalizing all the agreements with our enterprise partners, but it's moving along, and we're making progress every day. It's just the companies we're working with are not startups, and they don't operate on necessarily startup mentality, getting things done at the speed we do. But it's just a kind of a fact of life, and we're pushing along. When we do fan meeting and exclusive party, where are the fans that want to meet up at? And if there's a cluster of guys that want to have a Theta meetup, especially around a blockchain conference, let us know, and if we can make an appearance, then let's do
We'll show up. Yeah,
let's do another Theta meetup like we did in Seoul. Yeah.
Okay.
Sitting Rex, if you had a question on the Google forum, didn't get it through all of them, but if you got something, feel free to submit it here. And yeah, we got about 10 more minutes. You can answer a couple more questions. Hopefully some good ones. Don't feel like we gave out enough T-fuel. So if you can really stump us, ask a question that Tim and I can't figure out, then you'll definitely get some T-fuel for that. Sliver team building in Vermont. I don't know if we can justify.
Teacher make Vermont maple syrup.
Well, it sounds lovely. I don't know if we have enough blockchain events out there or potential video platforms that we can justify it, but it would sound like a lovely team offsite.
Yes.
I think if we go back up to the previous submitted questions a little higher, we had a couple more good ones. Let's see. Yeah, 89 Pentel, no problem. We want to make these a more regular thing because, obviously our Telegram is a 24/7, 365. Ask me anything from me, and I try to do my best to, answer all questions and not avoid anything. But I know it's easier to kind of get the nuance of things when we're talking.
Yeah.
And certainly with our guests like Tim, who's knee deep in our enterprise partnerships and building out things like the smart TVs, so have some different expertise from our team coming in. What will be the best announcement if your wife tells you she's expecting or a Samsung partnership? I'm not even sure how to answer that one, but why don't we give who what 500 T-fuel? Because I said if you get me and you can't answer the question, then here, take your T-fuel. Take your T-fuel. Okay, we'll drop some T-fuel in there later for you. All right, got a couple other good questions here. I saw, if you scroll up a little bit here. No, on the chat here, I saw some other questions around after I was flabbergasted about the question. Go up a little bit more on the chat there, yeah. How often will Guardian nodes switch to a validator, and what would be the comparable return to that of a Guardian node? So we haven't finalized exactly how soon they'd be rotating in. If you're asking about, like, say you're running a particular Guardian node, how often will you rotate in? That's just going to depend in part on how many Guardian nodes there are. But that level of specificity is still in the works. As soon as we launch on testnet in Q4, then we'll kind of see that in action. But also, part of the reason running on testnet first is to see what works on that front. And since the users are running on Guardian nodes on testnet, we'll be giving real T-fuel from mainnet to users in the same amount that they're running it on testnet. And part of the reason for why is because we want you to act like you really would if you're running a Guardian node. Like, there actually is tokens of value at stake if you're running on the testnet. And that's important for exactly reasons like this. We want to understand when we're seeing how often should Guardian nodes rotate in, or users running nodes acting differently if they think they're going to get rotated in for a certain time or something like that. We'll get a better picture of that if people are incentivized to behave like they would in a real mainnet implementation, meaning you're getting real T-fuel.
Oh, this one. What has been the biggest change in mentality since launching the project and roadmap and vision of Theta's ultimate widespread adoption? The biggest change in mentality, I think I understand the spirit of the question. I think the biggest change in mentality, right, for us as a company is we're thinking bigger now, right? We're definitely starting off as a video streaming protocol infrastructure, but that's not the extent of the vision, right? The extent of the vision is to be a decentralized data delivery network that covers all types of data content, all types of data types for the entire internet, basically. And so I guess we can talk about it in terms of a spectrum, right? and where we are right now is where we're not saying that we're going to displace the centralized content delivery networks right now, because it's just not a practical way to pitch something to a large enterprise. We can't go up to them and say, you should replace your entire infrastructure and just use this blockchain product that we have.
It's gonna be a hell no.
Right, yeah, and they'll say, see you later, see you in like 15 years, come back to us then. So right now, our goal, right, is to do these integrations and to be this layer that sits on top of their existing infrastructure. But we're definitely looking into the future, right, which is in the future, 10 years down the road, when we mentioned this in previous parts of this live stream, which is we have a sufficiently dense network of nodes and edge cachers and viewers, right, where there's all this data that's flowing through the network, then perhaps at that point, right, when you have tens of millions or hundreds of millions of nodes, then maybe in select regions of the world or like in good portions of the world, then you don't need a centralized server, centralized content delivery network to actually deliver whatever it is that you need on the internet. So I think the change in mentality has been that we're focusing and we're heads down focusing on this one problem space because we need to prove that we can do it well, and then that's how we get enterprises to come and work with us. But then we're definitely expanding the scope of what we're targeting and addressing, and that's really the end goal that we're running towards. Yeah.
Okay, we got last couple questions in chat and we'll wrap up. So Eeks has had a couple questions on the Guardian nodes about lockup for the testnet period. So like say you've got a given number of Theta, you meet all the requirements and you're one of the first users running a Guardian node on the testnet. Are you required to lock that up for the whole period? We haven't made a final determination on that, but most likely there's not going to be a requirement that you lock that up. That said, it's going to be a limited number of slots, and just based on what we're seeing in the PGN so far, there's going to be less slots, and there are people that want to run a Guardian node on the testnet. If you are running it and choose to go offline for a couple days, your tokens won't be locked up, but that said, you won't still be included in that group while you're running it on the testnet. So, no guarantees that you would get a slot back after that. Same thing for if you, can we scroll back up? There's a second part to that question that was related to that as well. If you're selected for a top 100 with a certain amount of Theta, are you expected to commit the full amount to the Guardian node? I mean, yeah, I think so. Otherwise, you could have some weird effects where, I don't know, someone who has the funds who buys a lot of Theta the day before and uses it, and then we'd have to get into, is it seasoned, how long has it been held? It would get a little complicated. Just for practicality, I think we would just say if you were selected partly on the basis of that, which the number of Theta tokens staked will be one of the determinants, not the only one, but one of them, then you would be expected to hold that.
Yeah, I think with this progressive rollout of Guardian nodes, we're looking for the first 100 especially, right, to be reliable and to actually serve the purpose of what the Guardian node would do, right? It is mainnet, it is, it'll be live, so in a sense there is something at stake, right? So we're looking for committed people that are running these nodes. So that's the angle that we're coming at it from. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll put it out, and we'll, not to sound flippant about it, but we'll see what happens. That's part of why our MO is always to put things out on testnet or to put beta versions out, and it means not everything always works on day one, but it means we get feedback, we get to change things. We're constantly changing things to, like in our clients, we put out to fix them to respond to community concerns or what's working and what's not, and we rely on you guys to help do that. If we start running this testnet Guardian node program and there's issues, whether it's because of lockups or a user who gamed the system to get in and they shouldn't have, these are the kind of things we're trying to figure out. And when we're talking about a distributed network with hundreds of people, you just can't really do it in a lab. You kind of got to go out there and see what works. So that's what we'll do, and we're always looking to improve, and we're always open to change. We don't expect to get things right on the first time. All right, I get one last question we can end on. Coin Hunter asks, will you guys fault the Guardians if they have a power outage or something like that? Yeah, we'll probably have to think of something in place where it's not literally like if there's a catastrophic event, or even if we can't sit there and ask everyone why a Guardian node went offline, and I don't want to check whether there was really a tsunami in X town or a earthquake here. I think we'll probably just set up some type of tolerance level where if it goes offline for some reasonable amount of time, then it wouldn't be that you're no longer eligible to run a Guardian node. That said, if it's consistent, or if you're just flipping it on every other day when you feel like it, that's not acceptable too. And no hard feelings. It's just that's how the actual network's going to run.
It's
check to see who's consistently running a node, and if you're not, then you're no longer participating in consensus.
Yeah, it's securing. It's the second layer that's securing our protocol. So that is something that we have to take into account, right? When we are looking at the Guardian nodes and the validators for securing our network. We are, for all of the enterprise validator partners that we're onboarding, we're asking them to have redundancies, in terms of the nodes that they're running. And again, it's because it's so mission critical to proposing blocks on Theta. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone for tuning in and submitting your questions, especially the ones that really got Tim and I thinking, stuffed us a bit. That's why we have these, and to give you guys a chance to get the answers straight from the source. So for any questions we missed, feel free to pop into our Telegram. It's always like I said, it's always an AMA in there. And we'll continue to do these live events on a regular basis. And we'll see you soon for the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Take hold of me. You're flowing through my bones like ecstasy, ecstasy. Feeling heavenly. You open up my world, girl. Hold the keys, hold the keys. Reeling me in, bending me backwards, lady. Speaking your sins.